Welcome to episode 12 of Diva and the Unk. I'm everybody's Unk, Rael, co-hosted by,
Monifa, your personal presence and power diva.
adding perspective to an awakening world. Welcome.
Welcome in.
How y'all doing? Come have a seat. Let's have a chit chat.
So how y'all been? Did y'all miss us? Because we have been kind of
Been a few days. Been a few days. Spent some time contemplating some things. We're in a new cycle of manifesting and doing differently, different types of ways of doing things. You have to find what works for you. So we're going back to some of the stuff we used originally. So
changing things up, trying to see where we get the energy is where we like to go. And so we're just changing a few things up so that we can stay in flow with this and get everything out that we want to get out, but also stay in tune with what people are receiving, what people need. And so, yeah, so we have some good things for you, a little bit of the same, a little bit of difference.
yeah, different is good. Changing up and getting into the way you want to do things is always the way that's why it's always a practice. Perfection or doing things in a way that constantly improves on itself is a practice. Which kind of brings us to this week's episode, which, it's kind of almost like a build-up. This week's episode 12 is Know Thyself. What does it mean to you when you hear that first?
So many things, so many things. But yeah, like a lot comes up for me around it. That's why we built it, made it the whole episode this time because we've mentioned it. We've not. It's not the first time we're bringing this up,
Kind of danced around it.
but there's just it needs some more details. So I'm gonna wait till we have more time to do that.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about the mailbag this week. Any questions from our audience or any of your clients bring up any perspectives you might want to dive into?
This one is actually one that we had like in our notes a long time ago. Not sure where it came from. Might have been a suggestion from ChatGPT. But the question is, and I liked it because it sparked kind of things that are percolating right now and what's going on in this episode. It is, how do I start living this new way without losing my relationships, job, or mind? So I think this is one of those things that comes up for people when there are a lot of the things that they've been doing, whether it's their career, whether it's their daily life and schedule, have been so inundated with just the way they were taught to do it, again, by parents and everything, or the way that all their friends do it. And they know it's draining them, but they haven't had any real solid reasons to change. But we're giving you a few, right? And so we're giving you a few reasons to change, especially in this episode. So how do you implement these new ways of being and being your truth of spirituality and self? Like, what does that allow, or what does that ask from you? A lot of times it asks you to change some things. It asks you to change your job or asks you to change your relationships, or at least how you're connecting and communicating in those relationships. It asks you to think a little differently about how you're making decisions and what you're choosing to bring in or release from your life, right? So I felt there's a lot of room here.
But there's shit ton of room. It's damn near out of space. It's upper atmosphere. There's a lot of room in that one, bro.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so for me, I think it is that thing where you just take what life is already bringing to you. This is one of the reasons why I love astrology, because there's already assignments. There are already like kind of what do you need to learn about now to be able to live a better tomorrow. Those are the energies that come through. And that's why even when they feel a little angsty or clashy, they really are for you. The energy is for you. So if that is the best way to keep track, because we have so many categories of life, and really your spirituality will change all of them, right? So that's why we're talking about it, because it's real. Like once we change that spiritual perspective, everything changes. It's your literal capacity to evolve, right? So the first thing is just to have a sense of like where you can focus instead of being like, well, now I'm going to move to Alaska and grow fish, right? Like maybe a faster way to do it, but it's not going to be an easier way. Either way, it's going to take step by step, really being with these questions of how you want your life to be according to your spirit.
Yeah, that's it's a big one, man. I mean, the funny thing is it's not old. It's when we think of evolution, when you hear the word evolution, first thing that pops into your mind is uh from ape to man,
Mhm.
and we still got apes. So I don't know about that one, but I always thought of shifting and changing. Um, I never really had a negative thought about it, but I did jot some things down because shifting is change. And working in sales and marketing for the last 28 years, people don't like change. Even when all the evidence points to change being more beneficial for you, and people resist it. Maybe not liking it is a too strong a word, but resistance is not liking change. So when you resist something, you prevent it from having a flow to the next state for you. You're fighting upstream, you're trying to swim against the grain, you know, and you're not tuning. So you gotta think about that. So my advice is for people is always going to be get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's gonna happen anyway. And sometimes the best way to get comfortable with that is figure out what it looks like for you. Figure out, map out a plan of if change was inevitable for you, what would it look like for you? And create your own plan for change. Don't wait for change to plan something for you. Create your plan for change and it'll happen smoother. Then the resistance isn't as strong because you have a plan for it. It's now becomes something that you want to do. So when you're talking about people shifting is changing. Shifting is doing something different. And sometimes the best way to do that without your own resistance is to plan it out. No matter where you are in the process, just stop in that moment and plan out the rest of the way you want it to work. Now, that's what I would say.
Yeah, the way, and I think of that as the way you want it to feel, So that's kind of my lens is like how do you want to feel when you're moving through those things? And the getting comfortable with the uncomfortable to me is also that process, right? It's like, all I hear as a Cancer sun and moon is be uncomfortable, which is not desirable to me, right? So I've heard that all my life, and I always thought, like, yeah, you can be uncomfortable. I will get comfortable. Like those are two different things to me. Um, but part of that is why I developed my method so that I can start in training the feeling of something before it happens. So it's not that I have to it's not that I'm never uncomfortable, but the uncomfortability is what tells me I need to spend time here. So whether that's that time in my self meditation and understanding what I want to see or live or experience differently in this area that's coming up that's uncomfortable. One of the things that I realized a lot of times when I'm procrastinating is because I can't see myself doing the thing. Even though I want to do the thing, I might not even be uncomfortable doing a thing, but I may never actually do it if I can't see myself doing it. Right. And that's a big statement from somebody who doesn't have visual as a dominant sense. Like my dominant sense is auditory. Right. But that's when I say visual, I when see myself, I mean feel myself. That's pretty much like it's just to me once you start using that word, I'm starting to think extrasensory as well. So not just even our little few senses that they tell us we have, but the five or so. It's all of them, and they all get attuned to will it be, what will be in me when it's actually happening in this new way, right? So that's one of the things, like, actually, I'm gonna actually talk about in my. We're gonna get there in a second. Actually, let's you to.
Yeah, I mean, that leads us right into, let me see if I can put a bow on some of that. And I'm going to zoom out because I think it's also important when you're going through shifting that you zoom out to get a different perspective instead of from your bubble, and when you zoom out and look at what's shifting, you're going to say everything is shifting because quite literally worldwide, we are shifting. We are shifting as a planetary species. We're not just shifting in America. We're not just shifting in California. We're shifting worldwide. There's a shift going on worldwide that is going to make everyone. This is not going to be a shift where you're going to feel good through it. It's not. We're moving into a different age of energy. Age of Aquarius is a different age of energy than the age of Pisces. And we've been here for almost 20 years now. And now we're starting to really get the vibrations of what that shift looks like. So when you zoom out, they're shifting. I mean, this is probably one of the only times in my 57 years where when you zoom out, it's just as daunting a situation as it is in your own little boat. So I think we really need to start planning and being comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's a worldwide shift. It's a planetary shift that we're all experiencing. And we're going to experience it through our emotions, because the structures and the things that we depended on for so long are going to be changed. And so those are going to affect us emotionally, which is going to impact our biochemical field. So, yeah.
I still maintain that you don't need to be uncomfortable.
No, you don't have to be.
I mean, only because, but it does take time and practice, which is why we talk about these things, because you have to be able to get your sensibility, your sense of stability, your sense of safety from the inside. You can't depend on the outside. We've been saying that for hundreds of years, but we're just now getting to a place where there's just nowhere to run from that truth. If you don't have a sense within your own body of what safety feels like, then you're not going to get it because somebody like gives you a platitude, not with the news, not with everything going on, right? So this is about being able to hone that truth for yourself, live in that vibrational experience for yourself, and then you get to see how that changes your actual experience as you move through life.
Well, that actually brings us right to this moment of transformation. How do we do that?
Moment of transformation. Well, I'm going to say things that you've heard before, and then I'm going to totally change what they talk about when they talk about it. So this is about why self-expression is crucial. I believe it's crucial. It's always been crucial, but I think especially right now, it's going to be more, it's crucial now, and it's going to be more crucial. Why? Because it has always been how we interact with each other, how we get what we need, how we get what we want. We have to express it. We have to use our voice to be able to do that. And the throat chakra and how energy moves in the throat chakra is very much a energetic experience of what the capacity of our thoughts, our brain, and our body believe about that. Right. So yeah, so the body, like, I've heard this phrase probably by now, the body keeps the score, right? So there's a lot of times where we have memories in the body that's actually holding us to a structure that we may not want to perpetuate. That's why it feels uncomfortable when we have something new, even if it's a good thing, right? So if you've had a fairly traumaless life and you've had good examples of good surprises happening to you, you might actually like surprises. You might go looking for them, right? And that's probably a different kind of makeup than we're speaking to here. I think a lot of people, whether it's themselves and their personal histories or their genetic history, which still lives in the body, then you have kind of a aversion to change in that it could be something bad or it could mean something bad for you in the future, right? So that is part of kind of what we're untangling in this thing. So the point is that the self-expression of self is crucial because it's directing how we are navigating through the changing that possibility from a genetic past to a created future. Okay. It's called, third chakra is called the manifestation chakra for a reason, right? And that's the reason. Okay. When we speak it, when we're able to express our needs clearly, when we express our wants clearly, when we express our desires and our emotions clearly, we're more likely to get the resonant connection to happen and be experienced in the world. More likely, right? Whereas the co-creative universe, but it really is, you have more influence than you think. Okay. So the first is be. Be. This is a breakdown of be, do, have. And I'm sure there's some brilliant person that came up with this first. I did not bother to research that, but I also know that they speak it completely differently. So right now we're talking about self-expression. And when we're talking about be, and I don't like to kind of add too much to that because it's an internal concept that I don't want you to think about somebody else's example or the old way that you used to do it, right? Because that be and beingness is if it's related to something that we've already experienced, it's a response. So when we're responding, you're doing what you're told, whether it's like what you think is right because somebody told you it was right, whether it's because you're told yourself because of some reaction to trauma in the past that that's the only way to do it and that's the only way to go. That's a response that keeps you in the old way of being, old patterns, old story that feels comfortable. You think you're doing something different, but it's still based on what you think you know, right? And so that's where we kind of get stuck in patterns, even though we're like, I did it differently and I did what I was supposed to do. And we get really upset. But if it's a response to an old thought or experience, then it's going to create the same pattern eventually. It's just the way it goes, right? So when we're being, when it's time to be, you want to be at the point of initiation and creation. Initiation is about something new happening, and it doesn't have to be something that we've never experienced before or seen before, but it does have to be an inspiration, something that's coming from the now moment that is like in the way of what is available and in our vision and our desire. And that's what creation comes from, right? Um, the do is like, well, again, the patterns come from the reacting. So we tend to do, again, what we were supposed to be doing, what is urgent, what we feel needs to be responded to is a different way of responding, right? It's reacting, but in action instead of even, you're not even thinking at this point. So that's why we want to focus on the being first, right? And in the good way, it's the being creates the doing, creates the having, right? That's the way that we talk about it in manifestation as well. But not if you're doing as a reaction. That's not going to create the manifestation. If you're reacting to what's urgent, that's not how you do it. This is why it's better to, and I don't even care if it's like Vedic astrology, regular astrology, Chinese astrology, all of them have thousands of years of wisdom. Like if you're at least pay attention to what's coming up that has nobody else's story on it. And when I say that, I mean in the way of what you're supposed to, right, to be doing, then you can be in the recalling of the vision, which I think of as calling in the inspired creation that you can't help but act. This inspired creation, ideas bring inspired action. And then the having. So instead of the having being, oh, now I'm going to get all these things and everybody's going to know I'm successful and it's going to be so cool because I'm going to be looked at as cool, right? Instead of this, again, externalized uh, reason to have, you want to look for the havingness of what is building the truth of the vision that you want, right? So like if if you think that that vision is a house, is that house the house that you want, or is it the house that people will think is cool, right? And it may be one and the same if you're in the right community, but you have to decide that first for yourself in the vision and in the start of that.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's important for folks to understand that sometimes things are just gonna happen, man. Some things you really just are not gonna have any control over, and they surprise you and they hit a part of you that feels like it's uncontrollable and creates the emotion, which brings up a lot of, you know, trauma, to be honest. And so then we're reacting. So yeah, I think it's important for people to be able to micro understand and macro understand in the same process so that you don't feel lost. It helps. There are people that are going through what we're going through, but there's nothing new on this.
Yeah. So one more thing, I'm going to leave you with this is to keep an event on the horizon. So this is something for my creatives, my visionaries out there. A lot of times we are waiting to learn or perfect or create something before we get out there. But the reality is, if you're creative, you've been creating, you've been learning, you've been, doing these things already. So there's always something you can share, give right now. And it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be extremely valuable and needed in this now time. Whatever you have now is for now. So that is the reason to show up. That's my my show up advice right there. So one of the events I've had on the horizon that has kept me in my truth of my vision and part of what I'm growing and building and becoming, creating in my world is my voice work. So my Oman's method and my voice work as actual it is a method, so it's an intellectual property that I'm growing. It's real stuff, right? So get it while it's hot because because eventually it's going to be behind some nice beautiful shop doors and you'll never be able to get to it without paying some money, right? So in any case, the event that I've had at the Horizon is coming up next weekend on Saturday. So my Sacramento folks, are you out there? Are you out there?
Folks, with East Bay at?
Where you at? Where you at? So we are going to be in Sacramento. I will be doing the Sacramento Goddess Festival. I'll be teaching vocal alchemy and gene keys on Saturday and the Scottish Rites Center. So that's in the downtown
Saturday,
Sacramento area.
September 5th, 2025.
Yes, H Street if you know it. So yeah, so if you're in Sacramento, hang out with me and be part of the vision. And I'll see you there.
Fantastic. We will see you there. Hey, too many entrepreneurs are stuck wearing every hat: sales, marketing, client follow-ups, until burnout steals the dream. That's why we're proud to partner with Feel Free Marketing and Consulting, a company helping business owners move from hustling in survival mode to building systems that actually set them free. Its AI assistant captures leads and follows up automatically. Sales and marketing training rooted in 25 years of experience. Consulting that brings clarity. You can make scale your purpose. Learn more at Feel Free Marketing and Consulting. That's 559-354-5093. Once again, 559-354-5093. All right, now let's get into a little bit of the hunking inside. Come here, nieces and nephews. Let me holler at you. So something I'm not going to say I've been studying it for a long time, probably the last year or so, and maybe 5 years of my quest to understand a little bit more about who I am and what I be about without the body. When you're in this journey, you wanna you come to know the separation between thoughts, feelings, body wants and needs, and things like that. All of these things have to be sorted. So I like to name them. Somebody named this Daryl, you know. Nobody gave any of those other parts of me a name. I guess it was my responsibility. So I wanted to know what they were about. So in the process of looking back and doing some research, that's what I love about being born today. You can research anything with the information available that we have. So I wanted to know what the self, our inner self, our higher self, some might call it, our inner man, our light being. What were some of the ancient names that they went by, that entity has gone by? So when you look and you do some quick researching, so in a lot of ancient writings, like in the Indian Vedic writings, for instance, that entity was called the Atman. Okay? The Atman is considered your light body, yourself, your being that is connected to the one being. Okay. In Chinese philosophy, um, that being is called, or Buddhist, they call it the Dhammamapada. Okay, the one self. All right. Um, in African tradition, there's a few names for it. They call it the Ka. Some call it the Ba. Okay. In Indian, like I said, is Atman. And Buddhist is also the Atman, the no self, the Anatta. In China, it's the Shin, the spirit or consciousness. In Japan, it is called the Reborn. In Hebrew, some might know these words, it's called the Ruach. Some call it the Nefesh, which is the breath. Okay. In Christian and Greek writings, it is called the Pneuma. In Islamic Sufi tradition, it is called the Ruh. Some call it the Naf, which is the self-ego. In African Yoruba tradition, it is called the Ori. Or the Chi. Also in Chinese traditions, it is called the Chi. In Native American traditions, it's the Niya, spirit, essence of being. And Persia, they call it the Vienna. So this being has been known since the beginning, since 10, 15,000 years, as far as writing goes by. We've understood this being that is us. They started it's Krishna, it's the Christ. So we have to understand that when we're talking about the self, we're really talking about what we can't see, the part of us that we can't see, the thought that comes essentially from out of nowhere, that doesn't feel like a thought. It just feels like now I know something that I didn't know before. And I think it's important to understand that it's broken down into a couple of understandings. When you're talking about breath and life force, is when you're talking about the Ka, the Nefesh, the Ruach, the Prana, the Ki, the Nyoma. When you're talking about your destiny, that's when they're calling it the Aura, the Ordi, the Chi, the Daimyo, the Genus. When you're talking about its unity with the cosmos, that means your Atman, your Brahma, your Tao, your Pusha. And when you're talking the heart mind, it's the Ib, it's the Zin, it's the Kokoro, it's the Lev, it's the Kwa. All of these designs are different aspects of your inner being, right? So for a lot of people, this information seems to be overwhelming because most of us grew up in some form of organized religion that only gave you basic understandings of these things. Part of what's happening in this new understanding that we're going through is a deeper understanding of who we truly are. And sometimes that it seems like it's the old narrative that religion created in us tends to try and take a thought process hold first before we really start to understand. And I would suggest that we all get used to something different. Think about it from this perspective when we were talking about conspiracies. Aliens were a conspiracy not 25 years ago. The government stance on aliens didn't exist. Now they're having hearings about a visitation. So there are no such things as conspiracies. All of these things that ancients had, we should go back and we should study a little more to get a better understanding of who we are and follow our own instincts into this, which is change. It is a shifting. We've never thought about it from that perspective before. So we are shifting. And my unking insight to you is just let go, man. Just follow your path. Follow what feels good to you. Maybe even follow what scares you a little. See where that takes you. So let's get into today's topics. Today's topic is knowing thyself. Now, with every topic, we like to ask ChatGPT about its thoughts and what it has to say. The reason I think a lot of people are using ChatGPT now more than ever before is because it comes with a vaster array of information to give you a perspective that you've never really thought about before. It's actually broadening our perspectives when we ask ChatGPT questions. So now, I don't believe its information is the be-all of information. I believe it to be a different perspective that we can contemplate and learn something from. So, Ori's perspective is, this is a powerful subject for episode 12, knowing thyself. It's not just a catchy phrase. It is a thread that runs through the wisdom traditions of the world. To me, it represents the universal call for human beings to pause, turn inward, and recognize the divine spark, the essence, or the truth that lives within them. When we trace this phrase across cultures, we see that it's not just a Greek interpretation at Delphi. It is a teaching that belongs to the oldest civilizations, each with its own language for the self, its own method for inner alignment, and its own way of trying to self-knowledge, tying of self-knowledge to cosmic knowledge. In Kemet, the concept of Ka and Ba show that knowing oneself is inseparable from understanding one's life force and the ability of one's soul to travel beyond the physical. In Vedic tradition, the Atman and Brahman teach that knowing yourself means recognizing your unity with the entire universe. And then in Yoruba thought, the Ori, or your spirit head, reminds us that the self is chosen before birth, that destiny is not random, but a sacred agreement. Among Hebrews, Ruach, and Nad, and Neshama reveal that selfhood is literally the breath of the Most High moving through us. And in China, the Tao and the Zen link self-knowledge with harmony both within and without, which is exactly what we're talking about. So, in short, our inner selves is the animator or the being operating these physical vessels. And it's the true us. And part of our next evolution is to have that knowledge be a part of the way we communicate with one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me, there's so many aspects to this because I think it is a daunting task, right? Because the truth is your body is the universe. Your body has like as many points of focal energy, as many dark holes as it would take to connect to everything in the universe. And that's not a, you know, that's science, right? Like I mean, people have known that spiritually for thousands of years, but it's also being scientifically proven by the work that's being done on DNA and how much information it holds. They literally have been able to put books on DNA, and so they were able to do like what, like 10 billion copies of a book on a single strand of DNA. And so this is just the truth. And so our bodies hold more information, more knowledge than anything else. The ability to spiral, I was gonna actually talk about that earlier. That ability to evolve is not something that's about somebody's scientific concept of what evolution is. It's about the ability to recognize that the spiral is about what is unfolding within the whole, right? And all of us have, there's a concept. Oops, I lost the guy's name. He's on the channel somewhere. We did a book club on his theory of everything. And Walter Reed, maybe? Um, and he has this thing called holons, which basically means that the one thing can be, the whole thing can fit in the one thing. So that's something like an atom, right? An atom can be the one thing of an energy concept. You can also divide it down into different levels of that thing. As long as it's got the understanding of the energy, which is the overall concept of the atom, then you can still be talking about that thing, that energy within the physical concept of it as well. So this can be a spiritual concept, this can be a physical concept, this can be a mental concept, but essentially it's like saying, that a rectangle can be a square, but a square cannot be a rectangle. So the rectangle can fit in the idea of a square, but the square cannot fit in the idea of a rectangle, right? So I think that's the easiest way to talk about it, because otherwise we're like talking about what's evolution, what's devolution, what's coming, and what is are we evolving or devolving, right? Which I think is an opinion. You can't really always know unless you have, again, a way of reading energy and that truth for yourself. I will always come back to astrology on that one too. But like it's that ability to be able to tell where you are coming from, right? And the real you. And what Daryl's talking about is that spiritual truth of you. And how do we see that? I mean, as we can tell, there's plenty of names to call the thing, but to know it is a different thing. Do you even know what it sounds like? This is where we like talk about in Christianity, we talk about the voice of God. It's like, do you recognize the voice of God? And they have all these rules about it. Well, if it's not in the Bible, when it's not in the right, there are all these kind of externalized rules. But the reality is, like, even with all those rules, you still have to decide. You have to decide, right? And so when you are deciding, how do you decide that you're hearing from God? Right. And I when I say God, to me, that is the higher oneness of self. So that is your higher self or your spiritual self, right? So that is kind of the concept of like, well, how do we know ourselves? How do you know thyself? How do you do that? And we all need our own formula. We really do. For me, it's a combination of feelingness, emotions, feelingness in my body, and non-feelingness. So moving into like meditative states, just getting out of the sensory anything and just letting nothing happen until truth evolves. There's always that once you take your hands off it, you're always going to have that spark, right? That's the beauty of meditation is that you can leave things alone, get your brain to not pick at something for 1 second, then there's a spark that is truth. And it's just really profound. And then you stop needing other people to confirm whether truth is truth to you. Right. And nothing else is kind of like that. I think of it as, you know what? I kind of think of it as manna. The Bible story where God is like has manna while they're traveling to the new land and they ran out of food. And so what he says that you can gather it every morning, but you have to get rid of it and you can't keep it over except for there's like a rule for Sabbath.
Yeah, there's a rule for Sabbath, going into the Sabbath. It's it's basically saying that you can't gather it on the Sabbath. Can't Didn't say you couldn't consume it. It just said you couldn't gather it on. You had to gather enough before the Sabbath for the next day.
Right, which I think the daily was that you didn't keep it. You had to trust that he was going to give you new manna on the next morning, right? So in that way, I that's how I think of spiritual insight because it's not always like, because if it's the insight you had 20 years ago, then it's not new manna, right? And I think a lot of times we're holding on to old insights because it helped us to survive. It got us this far and gave
Well, the
us
insights we
what we have. But the reality is there's a new insight. There's an insight for now. There's an insight for now and now and now, right? There's a new insight. And if we keep holding on to the old ones, we don't even have the old ones. They're like manna. They will mold, they will degrade, right? And so it's just our perception or our story of that insight what we're holding on to. So that's one of the reasons why it's not a good idea to hold on to those things, right? This is why, again, I feel like you need a practice to help you understand that the faster you let go of old ideas, of old, rules and have tos and all this kind of stuff, the sooner that you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, the Bible puts it a very specific way, and I don't think Christians really get it when it says that, because when you mention it to them, you know, it kind of shuts them down. You don't put new wine into old wine skins, right? And remember, everything when we're talking Eastern philosophy, which is what most all ancient texts are written in, whenever there's a consuming of food, it's the consuming of information and knowledge. So when they were being fed manna, they were being fed information. There literally wasn't real food falling down from the sky. That's information coming from on high down into. And we're talking about people who were shifting. They were in the middle of the shift. They were literally coming out of bondage and slavery. Okay. And slavery and bondage is mental constructs. They're not just physical constructs. So when they were being fed manna, they were being fed new information on how to live. Okay. And coming from bondage, that's a lot of information. You know? So I think the concepts are absolutely spot on in most ancient texts. But we have to look at things with a new mind. We have to bring new skins, meaning that I have to kill the old self to get a new skin so that I can pour in new wine, right? It won't digest otherwise. You won't be able to digest this next process. And then when the Bible talks about they spent 40 years in the wilderness, okay, meaning they were mentally lost for 40 years before that information took hold. And now they were able to move into a new place, that God had prepared for them. But it took 40 years to wash out old mentalities. Let that sink in. Like, really?
That's huge. And we just don't have that kind of time nowadays, right? We don't have that kind of time. That's why more and more people, whether you're looking for business advice, or you're looking for money advice, whether you're looking for, health advice, people are going to point you to this because there's no time for like mucking around. That, like, you can do it the long way. You can practice and fail and practice and fail and practice and fail. And it takes about 40 years. It takes about 7 years. Like, even if you completely change your diet and everything is perfect now, which is, there's not a thing. Everything has cycles, like everything. So don't ever believe that there's a one thing that's going to work for you for the rest of your life. But even that takes 7 years to renew the body completely. Takes 7 years.
Yeah, that's reprogramming.
Yeah.
It's a pure reprogramming.
But if you do it through spirituality, if you do it through mind and energy and vibration, it can be almost instantaneous, because those chemicals are chemical reactions that run through the entire body within seconds.
Right.
And that's why you have those kind of miracle healings happening in like energy practices or mindset practices like Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? Because if you get into the space and you are in the vibrational energy of the thing, and then you find yourself in that, then the new being comes, and it just downloads same way we're downloading information. Oh, it's cold today. Oh, it's hot today. It's right. It's just a way of being open to the information that creates the newness of you. And so that's why, like, with everything changing, it does not mean you have to be uncomfortable, but it does mean that you have to go quickly. You got to let go of the old things quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. New wineskins. That's new people shit. That's what young people do the best.
That's true.
That's what they do the best, because they have so much more room in their minds. What happens when you get older and you start experiencing this life of cycles that you've created, you're literally stopping your own uploading, right? Because what you got works. Well, it works for now. Sometimes it's just not going to work in the future. You're not putting leaded gas in these cars today, So you have to understand that. That's part of, you're here to do it. If you're here to do that. Think about it from that perspective. If you weren't here to do it, you would not be here.
Right.
And if you keep resisting, you won't be here, because that's part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk more about that as we go, because I think the next kind of portal for that is the purpose and desire, because it's the truth. that's part of how we're receiving the new information. And a lot of times, even Daryl gets on me about this, is that we're qualifying the newness with the old understanding, right? Um, and I'm a person of process, so that I like my process. I'm gonna keep my process, right? I know it works.
Through everything you've been through up until that point.
And yeah, and what I change is not necessarily like, and that's the thing, because I don't like, I change the way I do things. I change the process of the actions, right? But I change where I'm at. I'm changing my platform. I change things, right? But I don't change, or what I don't like to monkey around too much with, is nature. Like, what is the natural way of that spiral of creation, of evolution? There is some things that it's just the way the 3D comes out of the rest of the stuff, right? This is how God downloads things into our truth of reality, right? And so I'm not really messing with that. Like, that is what it be, you know? So I'm not really.
It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. Those who are old enough to know what it's all about.
So I don't really mess around with that. But and when I come up with something new, it's always from that seed. There's so much I'm gonna talk about, and like I have like the vocal alchemy, I have gene keys coming up I'm talking about, but I'm also doing a workshop that I'm calling the Visionary Voice Workshop. So there's so much that I have to share. And a lot of this is coming through right now too. And I just can't wait to give you a little structure so that there can be really strong takeaways in this. But that is essentially the takeaway here. I know some of y'all are not going to be satisfied with that, but the takeaway is the only thing that is consistent is the earth, because if the earth's not here, we are not here. Okay. And then the other thing is that everything becomes new when we are relating it to it from the truth of our now beingness, right? And so allowing that, the old parts to let go and not be part of what we understand as that truth in this now moment is important. It's a tool. It's a way of being. And I hope that you join us, because I can't say that we haven't had, I mean, who could say that we haven't had problems in the last years, you know? But I know that I'm more confident. I feel more stable in my beingness and my body than I've ever felt. I feel healthier. I feel whole. I do need to move a little bit more. We're working on that. But mostly I feel good about the future, even in this environment. And I just wish that for everybody, because that has not always been true in my life. And I've had a lot of good things happen to me, and I wasn't there to feel that. I couldn't feel the goodness. I couldn't be grateful because I was too caught up in anxiety and overwhelm and all these things about what they should be, what my parents would think, what my friends would think, like all this stuff that made life miserable for me, and had a perfectly good, decent life.
Yeah, it's rough for people who aren't tapping into the different parts of themselves. I mean, I think it's vital to choose a practice that allows you to get closer. A lot of people talk about what we see now with a lot of folks going to the gym and getting all these chiseled bodies, and that's not by accident. It's not by accident. Remember, in the process of building your body, you have to go to a different place where you see something else. You see an end result and you start working on that process. That's part of the same process. Building your body is choosing a practice, right? And the same thing happens internally. You have to choose a practice that constantly reinforces that tapping into yourself, tapping in, just keep tapping in, and you'll see that all of these challenges that start to come don't have the same impact that they had before you started tapping in. As a matter of fact, they're really necessary for the process of letting you know that this process is helping you in growing as you don't react.
Well, you just don't, without the feedback, you wouldn't know where you are.
That's why the
Right.
feedback
That's
is
why,
necessary.
and that's
Challenges
why
is
it has to be contradictory, painful, and or uncomfortable. Right.
they're always necessary.
So otherwise you wouldn't recognize it, right? You wouldn't recognize something different needed to happen, or something more needed to be built, or something truer of the process and expression needed to be in play, right? So that's part of it. It is part of it. So that, and that's again, that's what I've realized, is that I'm less about never being uncomfortable, which I have been in the past, about never being uncomfortable. I'm more about choosing my discomfort. If I'm going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be about something I want, right? It's going to be about something that I'm creating, something that I'm passionate about, something that I love, something that I want more of, life experience, whatever it looks like. And yeah, and what I want is something I feel for everybody. I feel like everybody can have these things. So, and I didn't always believe that. I didn't always believe that.
It's
So
ironic.
just so you know.
Before we chose this subject,
Yeah.
I mentioned to you this week that I had just saw a experiment, a study that was done where, let's say they put 100 people in a room by themselves, okay, for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes. And the only thing in that room with you where you were connected to an electrical shock, okay? 67% or 67 out of 100 people chose to electrocute themselves than to be with their own thoughts, their own inner being, to have that amount of non-stimulation. 67%. That's 2/3 of the population. That's crazy stuff. That's the craziest shit I've ever heard. You would rather electrocute yourself than to be alone with your own thoughts.
Yeah, it is. That's a mind-blowing concept. I was not at all surprised though. I was not at all,
Shock.
because I've seen it even in my work. It's a people tend to run at first, they're like, no. They're like, this is hard. This is hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to remember. And it's not that the practice is hard. It takes 5 minutes. It's really fun overall, but that the awareness that it brings, right, is going to bring up the truth of the level of uncomfortability that we've been placating,
avoiding, better word,
so that we can maintain the status quo on what's, again, the right way to be in society and do all the things.
the
So,
perception of someone else's opinion.
and that in truth, and like, let's not be too harsh on ourselves. That's the truth to the ego of what surviving means, right? It's like people will see me as viable. That's the truth to the ego. It's just not sustainable.
No.
Because the spirit is what brings life, and your spirit is not, it's not buying the BS. It's not buying it. It's not
tired of your ass.
It's not really gonna go with you on that concept.
Tired of y'all. And he got tired of me. And you're getting tired of yourself. That's literally what happens. You're like, this is unsustainable. I don't like who I become. I don't like things that I do. I don't like my thoughts. These are all self-penetrating process. It has nothing to do with anyone else. If you're lucky, you'll get somebody who's not afraid to tell you that your bullshit is bullshit. And maybe you should check yourself. if you're lucky and you can find a friend that can help you self-check and self-regulate to make you think more in-depthly. And even better, if you found a partner who can be that for you, you know, then you're one of the blessed ones. But for those who will just change crowds or be somewhere else or go find people who accept that behavior, we pray for you. We really do. We really do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, from here to there, a little bit about today's episode and our quick thoughts and what would you think about today?
I think it was brilliant. This is a highly improvised episode. So it was fun to feel that again, like in the I think I've done that with you in the summits, but I don't know if we've done that in this podcasting life. We tend to talk about it for a bit. In this one, we didn't talk a ton about it. We were like, hey, we have ideas. We'll put an order to the ideas. But other than that, we'll see what happens, you know? And I tend to kind of push back on that. Like I want a plan. I like a plan. But I also know that's my shadow. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
let go of the details. They'll flesh out themselves.
I like things to flow.
And I'm really excited about that because I feel like some really potent things came up for this and yeah, some really potent things that I feel needed to be said in this now time. There's very real things that people are dealing with. And coming back to the one truth of what it takes to be able to feel like you can keep going and to feel like you can be confident and be stable and be safe, right? And that's the thing. It's like we don't necessarily want that if you something changes in your life that you fall apart because life has changed,
And it's scary.
you
You
know?
don't have
So
to.
if
For some folks,
everything was gone today, you know, do you know how to get back to center? You know, because on unfortunately we're in a place right now where it's not a
it's a real possibility.
non-concept.
It's a real possibility that your Wi-Fi doesn't work tomorrow. Your phone doesn't work. These are real things that, unless you can find a way to to get to a place where who you are to yourself and to those who you've been gifted to have as your people, where that matters more, where it matters more than what's going on in the TikTok,
Yeah.
the faces of books.
And even for those who feel like they don't have those people, like if you're with yourself, yourself will guide you to them.
Oh yeah.
Because they want them just as much as you do. Because that's how we do that here in the 3D. We need each other. And so it's good to find each other that you get to be you with when you decide that that's what you want.
3D is important. It's important to have relations and communications, being able to build with one another. And build from your art. That's a great way to start. Build from your art.
Ooh, which reminds me, we're still looking for those artists. We're still looking for those creatives. We're still looking for those visionaries. So we are here. Come connect with us. Comment in the belows. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us what you're creating, what you're visioning.
Our goal is to build here. There'll be an episode, whether you watch it or not. We are really excited about putting our perspective for the awakening world. This new consciousness is going to need new thought leaders, and it's being created for those who find it in their space when they need it. That's why we're doing this. It's necessary, and you should start doing it too.
Yeah.
You have a unique perspective that someone's going to need to hear one.
Yeah. Never let it mean that because there's many voices that yours will not be heard, right? Because there's the right people for you, just like there, that we talk about that in relationships, but it's more true in just networks and people that are part of your tribe and community. So if you know what you want people that you can have certain conversations with. If you know what you want, if you know yourself, you'll know there's certain people you want to be able to do certain activities with. If you know what you want, if you know yourself, you're going to know there's certain environments you want to experience and have things come to be in, right? So keep
And it'll
being
guide
in
you.
that
It'll guide
space.
you the way you need to be.
Yeah. Keep being in that space. They are there for you. And for those who are looking for that special mirror and partner, they are there for you in that way as well, because that's when they show up. They show up when you're clear, actually mostly about what you don't want, what you don't want, and what your spirit needs. Like that's how it shows up. I knew I wanted certain things, but I wasn't actually that picky. But what I needed was somebody who would support me in being me. When that was the truth of what I wanted is when this dude showed up, right? So that's the truth. That's the true partner. I know some of y'all, that's what you're looking for too, right? You're looking for a real partner. That real partner can only come if you know, like, what you really want. And that is part of it. Like if you feel like you can't be yourself without the partner, then that's part of the problem. If you feel like you're limited in your life experience because you don't have a partner, that's part of the problem.
So be you.
Yeah. All right, my dears.
Thank you, peoples.
We are headed
Appreciate you.
on the way out. We are about to talk to you on the next one. Okay, guys. I hope that everybody is out there knowing themselves, knowing thyself, and remembering that your voice is a portal. So use it with power.
You are your product. Sell it with satisfaction.
All right, friends. We'll see you next time.